Welcome to the Author's Edge radio show with Gael Freer and Bob Price. Now, their show airs nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network, Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. Each week on their show, they help authors create books that transform our lives and imaginations. Through radio excellence, they create a unique community resource, one that promotes, connects, and fosters a sense of well-being. Gael and Bob maintain a focus on sharing books, publishing, marketing, and writing solutions. They serve listeners by providing outlets for their creative skills and energies, and they help them flourish in the competitive marketplace. Their weekly show provides intros, writing spotlights, helps you in promoting your book, your writing, your publishing, your marketing tidbits, and much more. Okay, audience, here's Gael and Bob.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today, we don't have Bob with us. He's taken a little bit of a day off, shall I say. He had some things to do. But I do have a very interesting sidekick with me, which is my husband, Ralph. Say hi, Ralph. Hi. Wow. Does he sound enthusiastic or what? I need my cattle prod. Where is it? Thank you. So we've been gone for a while, and we are starting back up with our first show of the season. This is our third season, by the way, and we are starting with Catherine Muehlhausler, and she is a St. Louis author of several books, including her current one, Trilogy of the Magi. She is a teacher and a tutor and devoted Christian and a mother to many over the years. This new book is grounded in research by scholars as well as in the words of the evangelists and the Old Testament prophets. Her website, kathiem.com, has information on her other books, including an ebook, Friar Tuck, aka Friar Tuck, Tuq, and a King story, as well as the surprising events of how the Magi's story first came to her when driving to her teaching job in St. Louis, Missouri. By the way, the spelling of her last name is tricky, but she implicitly believed that she should use her own name rather than a pseudonym for her books. The 13-letter spelling, if you have a pen handy or pencil, can be sung to the Mickey Mouse song and is Muehlhausler. I don't sing because that's when I clear out the whole room. So on the book's back cover, she notes that to say her last name, simply say Muehlhausler. So tell me about your last name.
Well, a German professor said that I mispronounced it when I was working at St. Louis University, and he said it should be pronounced Muehlhausler. I said to him, I'm married into the family, and I can't quite tell them how to pronounce their name. And my married name is so long that phonetically my maiden name is actually in it, because my maiden name was Heiss, Hise. Hello to all the people who knew me as Kathy Heiss. And so it should be Muehlhausler, said the German professor.
Aha! The German professor has it. Oh, my goodness.
I didn't change it, and the family's never changed it over the years either.
Well, your latest book, The Trilogy of the Magi, seems to be a unique project. Now, I do know you gave me this morning a review about that book. You want to tell us about that?
I was stunned last night when I opened my email, and there was this review from, it's from the U.S. Review. As I said, this was, and I might use the phrase completely out of the blue several times, and this was 100% completely out of the blue. I could not believe the phrasing that I had constructed a complex, fascinating saga. And they did reference that it was based on a series of personal incidents, and then combined with her writing talent and grit, the book Trilogy of the Magi was produced.
Oh, wow. Your grit.
My grit. And I believe that that's because I originally wrote a King story, and which was about the youngest of the Magi who would Well, that's a part of how the plot came to me, and I'll share that with you a little bit later. But at any rate, I did publish a book on the youngest of the Magi, and then people would say to me over the years, when, Kathy, are you going to write about the other two Magi? And basically, I would say to them, well, I got nothing, meaning the way spectacularly that the original story came to me. And then I realized about 3 or 4 years ago that it was the impetus of all those people saying to me, when are you going to write about the other two? That was the spur, the catalyst to make me do it, as well as the sign outside the church door in the middle of spring that said, wise men and women still seek him. The day after I had committed myself that I would be writing the trilogy.
Well, signs are everywhere, so they tell me.
You just have to be open to them.
Absolutely.
And they're out there.
Absolutely. All right. That's the word of the day. Absolutely. So you were inspired to write it from something that you told me earlier about a car?
Well, yes, and this is absolutely a true story. So
yeah, we are going there. Absolutely.
The beginnings of my encounters with the Magi began one January morning when I was driving to my public school teaching job. And as I tell this story, you always have to remember that it was a public school that I was driving to where I worked at the time. Okay, completely out of the blue, comes the idea for a book. And I thought, well, this is a really good plot. And I'd written a couple of books before as an author. Maybe the listeners will appreciate this. They had gone nowhere in terms of publishing.
Mhm.
And again, so out of the blue comes this idea. It would be about the youngest of the three kings. As I'm driving, I'm thinking, well, it has to be the youngest who 33 years later could get on camels and travel that far distance to Jerusalem. Had no clue what the youngest Magi's name would be, could be, was. Matter of fact, the original Magi's name are even longer than my last name, like 15, 16, 17 letters.
Oh, my.
Okay. So just thinking about it, and I thought, okay, this is a good idea. I shared it with my two sons that night, and then 100%, I never thought about it again until 1 week before the end of the school year, driving to school again, as before, here comes the idea for this same book, more aspects of the plot, and I'm thinking, you're going to do this. This is going to be fantastic. It's how you're going to spend your summer and maybe the next years of your life. And I didn't realize it really was going to be the next years of my life. Okay. So I'm thinking now you are going to have to get another Bible. You are not a biblical scholar. You cannot be researching in the family Bible. Pages are too thin. You're going to be flipping pages. You could ruin the family Bible. Okay. That's going to be a given. We're going to get a Bible. And you need to do a lot of research, girl. You need to research Roman history and Jewish times. And wow, where are we going to start? Let's start by reading the book, The Robe. Now, that's R-O-B-E. I remembered vaguely as a child seeing it as a movie, and the book had been written ages ago.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'll go to the library. They're bound to have a copy or they can order it in. It's so old, it'll be fragile. Okay. Get to my school, that public school. There was a note in each teacher's mailbox that the library was spring cleaning. It was the end of the school year. And the note said, freebies for teachers. And I thought, not going to do me any good whatsoever because my prep period and lunch period were back to back at 12:30. I thought all the good things are going to be gone by that time, especially because I taught the gifted program and I needed, pretty decent materials for them and everything. Right. So again, that goes out of my mind. 12:35. Well, books are books and free is free. There just might be something in the library for you.
Right.
I go to the library. 3 tables were set up. Normally, as I think most people would, I would have started at the first table, right, wound my way over to table 3. Instead, I moved straight forward to the middle table, to the right side edge of the middle table, where side by side lay a paperback copy of the Bible and the most dilapidated copy of the book, The Robe, that you could possibly imagine.
Oh my goodness gracious.
That's what people say whenever I share the story with them. They actually laugh and giggle out loud. Some people will say they get goosebumps. I've got them right now whenever I share that story. And
That's amazing.
and that's what I said. And I also kind of said, well, if you're going to be this helpful to me, I guess I'm going to be writing a book.
Absolutely.
And it absolutely only took me 6 weeks to write the book.
Only 6 weeks.
Only 6 weeks because the plot was given to me, right?
Well, true.
Anytime I had any kind of a writer's block or anything, I'd be in church, I'd see something somewhere, it would spur me along, something from the pulpit that was said, and I'd think, okay, we're going to Capernaum now, or some other aspect of
Right.
Jesus' journey and everything.
Right.
And it worked. 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Now, the other two
I'm
books were
impressed
longer.
with that. 6 weeks. Oh my. So you were a teacher for
Many years.
many years.
Yes.
See, I was a teacher for 39 years.
I probably can match that.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
I haven't done the numbers recently.
Yeah, who needs the numbers?
Yeah, right.
Who needs a number? But you've taught a gamut. You've taught the gifted and you've taught regular.
Correct. I began at a Catholic school, St. Cecilia's, where I taught reading to 7th and 8th graders. My husband at the time was teaching in the St. Louis public schools, and we always had our vacations differently. The public schools would go
Right.
for Christmas and Easter at different times than I would, and so we were never going to be able to do the traveling on our poverty-stricken teacher salary that we hope to do. And so
I hear you. My husband and I are both educators as well.
Yep.
And yes,
yes.
Yeah. but we were both in the same school. So we both had the opportunity. We didn't have your problem, but we
Right.
understand the poverty-stricken part.
Right. Well, it made no sense for him to go into the parochial school system. So
No.
it made a lot more sense for me to go into the public school system, which I
Right.
did. And I was immediately a high school teacher at Cleveland High School in South St. Louis. And eventually I was transferred up to Sumner High School. And then my kids came along. And my older son was really, really smart. And at that point, I had taken a sabbatical from teaching. Though I actually, now I come to think of it, I did teach preschool for about 2 or 3 years.
Oh my!
As you say, the gamut. And so he was very smart. Basically, we wound up moving to South County, Melville School District. Always wanted him to go to Queen of All Saints Catholic School in South County, but they were building an addition when we moved there, and there was no room. When he winds up there, the principal basically said to me after he'd been there for 6 weeks, would I be interested in starting a gifted program for free, gratis? Oh, well, no income as usual,
Yeah.
which I did.
Teachers aren't,
Which I did, and it was fabulous. The kids won so many awards. It was absolutely fantastic. And so anyway, then he winds up going to St. Louis Priory, and so we moved out to Chesterfield, and so I got a job in the Parkway School District teaching the gifted, and then eventually wound up in Pattonville, and then my final teaching was at Normandy for middle. Well, actually, we had second
So you
second
retired.
graders. I retired. I needed to at that point.
I
don't you
would think so. Absolutely.
No, it was glorious. I loved teaching.
I agree.
From being a child, I had always wanted to be a teacher. We would play school at the house, and I was always the teacher.
Right. I loved my career, but I also love this too.
Absolutely.
So we move on and we try new things to do with our time. Absolutely. So
I snuck that one in on you.
I heard that. I heard it. So so getting back to your book on the trilogy, what was the research? Was it just those 2 books that you did for the research, or was there more research that you did?
Well, when I was at St. Louis University and trying to figure out my degree, my counselor said to me, what do you want to major in? And I said, I would love to major in history. I said, but I could also do English. And she said, are you going to work have to work all your life, Kathy? And I said, well, yes, I am. And she said, well, then you need to become an English teacher, because there's always a need for English teachers, not necessarily in the future for history teachers. And she was clarion in her thinking, because I think that is the truth. But at any rate, I have always loved history, and researching everything that I did for these books was a joy. And I would just be, obviously the internet was very helpful for the trilogy, but I will say, when I wrote A King's Story, my son Brett did a lot of the research for me. And I would say, I need the name of the pool in the Jerusalem temple where the thus and something happened, and he would find it immediately. And I thank his teachers for the great education that they gave him.
Well, you are listening to The Author's Edge with Gael Freer and Bob Price, coming to you weekly on Saturdays at 10 a.m. on KWRH 92.9 and KXOK 102.9 FM, and Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. nationwide on My Genre Radio Network. You can also view our latest videos of past shows at authors-edge.com online and download valuable information on marketing and publishing. So if you were to, it's a trilogy.
Yes.
Right. And so you, when you published it, you did it in 3 books instead of just one standalone. What was the reason for that?
Let me explain this. First of all 3 quote unquote books or stories of the Magi are in the one trilogy of the Magi. So people do not need to buy another book. The books they stand alone. They're woven together, of course, but you can read Melchior's book. And if the reader doesn't have time, life intervenes, can't start Balthazar's book, it's perfectly okay, because Balthazar's book actually takes place 20 years after the Magi followed the star. Now, I'm not recommending taking 20 years to start Balthazar's book, but that is the case. And then Gaspar's book again, and what happened was, I took A King's Story and it became the 3rd story in the trilogy, just slightly tweaked, maybe 800 words or so, in order to make it conform with the others. Maybe took a speech out of his A King's Story book and moved it into the others. But that book, and that is the joy of my life. I absolutely must state that. So that's the 3rd book.
Okay, so this is the copy of the cover of it, the trilogy of the Magi.
Correct.
Okay, and then the other book. Oh, that's it also.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all of your books are in this one book.
Melchior's book, Balthazar's, and Gaspar's book are all in this trilogy.
Okay.
No other book is needed to be bought.
And The King's Story
is Gaspar's book now.
Oh, okay. Okay, I didn't understand that at first.
Tricky.
Yeah, you are tricky, aren't you?
If you say so. I don't think that was a word that's been applied to me all that often. Maybe on the tennis court, but
you play tennis.
I do. And I will have to quit tennis when I can no longer outthink my opponents. But I might not be able to outplay them. My knees are a little rocky, but if I can outthink them, I'm going to beat them.
You should absolutely keep doing it then.
I love it.
I love it.
Do you play by any chance?
No, I do not.
Oh, I was going to challenge you.
I'm more of a runner walker type. Trampoline. I do the trampoline.
I'm amazed.
I have this little round. It's called a senior trampoline, but we don't have to worry about that. But it's it's a round one, and I jump on it. And my husband has videos of it that I'm thankful that he has not published it on Facebook yet. So I'm very thankful for that. But yes, that's what I do. I do the trampoline, and I love it. It's so much fun.
Very good. I have morphed into pickleball a little bit more, but tennis is what I love.
So what are you laughing about over there in the corner? Or are you over there in front of the computer? What are you? Yeah.
I want money to pay money to see that.
On the trampoline, they'll pay money.
Yeah, they're going to pay money to see that on the
You can make it a fundraiser.
Oh,
for charity.
For charity, or maybe for my income. One or the other.
Please don't encourage her.
Go fund Gael. What challenge? All right. So wait. So, what do you believe sets your trilogy apart from other works in the same genre?
Well, I would have to say that it's the fact that Melchior's book, it's set up as, okay, so his book goes back to meeting King Herod in Rome
Mm-hmm.
when he was a young man. And of course, Herod's always got his scheming going, and
Right.
he's working with Mark Antony and Augustus Caesar, who at that time was only called Octavian.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically the book moves to Melchior's book, and he sees the star. Okay. And
Mhm.
what in the world is this sudden object out in the night sky? Has no clue. But because he is a Zoroastrian priest, after he finishes all of his astrologic and astronomy research, says, I still have no clue on this book, and I believe that I should consider that somebody really special is being born, and what community of people is to the west and to the south. And he realizes that it is the Jewish people and Judah and so forth. And he has a friend, Rabbi Seth, who he invites to come and to his, I'll call it a palace or palatial home, if you will.
Mhm.
Seth comes, and Melchior says, tell me about basically Seth says, what can I do for you, old friend? And Melchior says, I'd like to hear what the Jewish religion thinks about the Messiah. And Seth says, the Messiah? Why, and he actually has a great line. I loved it when I wrote it. He says, are you considering converting? And Melchior goes into, I want to know about the Messiah. And so through Melchior's book, through all of the Magi's book, they're questing. They do not know who they are going to find.
Right.
And basically, they're all scientists and everything, and they're traveling. They wind up together. And Balthazar's book is set apart because 20 years later, he is captured by Bedouin tribesmen. And the Bedouin leader, owed his life in battle to the son of King Herod. And this would be Herod Antipas. And so after several years, Herod Antipas says, remember back when I saved your life? Don't you think you owe me a favor? And I want you to go out and capture how about capturing a king or a magi, depending upon how people, want to say it and everything. And so he does. And so he's been pursuing Balthazar for years. I don't want to spoil the plot, but it's yummy. And basically Balthazar then winds up influencing the tribe. And of course, there were Christian tribes who became Christian. And then Gaspar's book, of course, I've spoken about that before, and very unique. That Gaspar's book, he winds up, the beginning is that he is winding up in what we would call the Palm Sunday procession. Right. He hears one group of people talking about a magician who brought somebody back to life. And then he hears another group talking about a master who fed 5,000 people from a few loaves and fish. Neither group says the name Jesus. So he does not associate either of those people with the man that he is hoping to find, whose name is Jesus. And it actually turns out that Jesus is another version of Joshua. And there were many people who were named Jesus. And so at any rate, Gaspar's book takes off spectacularly after, I'm going to use the word gloriously, after the reserrection.
Oh, okay.
And again, I don't want to spoil the plot.
No, don't.
I'll tell you this. I'll just say this.
Yes, absolutely.
People
Keep
have
going.
told me that they were sad when the trilogy ended. Now, when the first person said this to me, I thought, sad? How could you be sad? It's a glorious ending. It's the most awesome ending possible. And then she said, I am sad. She said, I was sad because the book was finished and over. She said, my solution was to reread it. And that is what happened a number of times with The King's Story. A man one time when I went to Fort Leonard Wood said to me, I'm on my it's my 7th reading of A King's Story, which again is Gaspar's book now.
Right.
And he said, and it means something different to me each time.
Interesting.
The
Now,
glorious words for an author to hear.
absolutely.
We both did it.
But what the other thing I wanted to see now, where did you get your research from? I mean, what sources did you use?
Well,
because sources are important.
Oh, absolutely. Initially, when my son was at Priory, there was a professor at St. Louis University who knew of a book by a priest that it was basically it was about the children's Bible. I'll phrase it like that. And he told me some stories about the Magi there, including that the Holy Family was robbed when they were going into Egypt. And that's the prologue.
That's interesting. Why don't we stop at that point and we can continue this after our commercial break. And thank you, everyone. And we expect to have you come back.
El Potro Restaurant and Market, located at 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland, offers the finest variety of Mexican and Central American groceries and goods. El Potro Restaurant serves authentic Mexican and Central American cuisine, including daily specials, not to mention the best horchata and tastiest margaritas in St. Louis. Open 7 days a week. El Potro, 6920 Manchester Avenue, 1 block east of McCausland.
The United States has a strong tradition of welcoming newcomers and refugees. The Welcome Corps is a new service opportunity for Americans inspired to welcome those seeking freedom and safety and in turn help strengthen their own communities. Welcome Corps is a public-private partnership that is inspired by what Americans represent to so many around the world, a beacon of hope and refuge. All it takes is a helping hand. Are you ready to learn more? Contact the International Institute of St. Louis at info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090. That's info@iistl.org or call 314-773-9090. This is Arnold Stricker of St. Louis In Tune on behalf of the Dred Scott Heritage Foundation. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision was a major legal event and catalyst that contributed to the Civil War. The decision declared that Dred Scott could not be free because he was not a citizen. The 14th Amendment, also called the Dred Scott Amendment, granted citizenship to all born or naturalized here in our country and was intended to overturn the U.S. Supreme Court decision on July 9, 1868. The Dred Scott Heritage Foundation is requesting a commemorative stamp to be issued from the U.S. Postal Service to recognize and remember the heritage of this amendment by issuing a stamp with the likeness of the man Dred Scott. But we need your support and the support of thousands of people who would like to see this happen. To achieve this goal, we ask you to download, sign, and share the one-page petition with others. To find the petition, please go to dredscottlives.org and click on the Dred Scott Petition Drive on the right side of the page.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking to Catherine Muehlhausler about her book, The Gift of the Magi. The Trilogy of the Magi. Wrong author. And we were starting to talk about her sources. So can you give us more information about that?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the sources I used was The Birth of the Messiah by the scholar Raymond E. Brown, SS. And that book had been recommended to me by, again, the father of my son's classmate. The father worked at St. Louis University. Right. So I used that. And I think what I'll just make the statement is that I went through Westbow Press, which is a religious publishing house, and they would not publish the book until I had been able to annotate every reference that there was to something in the Bible. At first, I actually kind of resented it because I thought, well, I know 100% that my research was accurate and I've put nothing in there that is contrary to anything in the Bible. And but then after a while I thought, well, I think I will go along with them and I will go ahead and do this. Now I had to do a lot of changing, tweaking of, words and past
Right.
tense and present tense and the whole works like that. But eventually I wound up in, Melchior's book has 106 references to the Bible. And then by the time it was all finished with Gaspar's book, there were 249, with the last one being from Luke chapter 22, verse 19. And I was very happy that the scholars at Westbow Press did not change one single citation, not one single
That's
word.
excellent. Absolutely excellent.
I was very, very happy.
Absolutely. So what was that process like when you had how did they approach it? How did you approach it?
Well, as I said, for example, well, the first quotation is maybe about 22 pages into the book. When I say quotation, I don't really mean that; I mean citation.
Mhm.
And this was when that Rabbi Seth is
Mhm.
with Melchior, and he's talking about Moses and what happened in the desert and with the Messiah and so forth. And so, as I said, it just kind of moved through. One of the reasons why I was very hesitant about the footnotes is because this is a fiction book. Nobody
Right.
knows anything about the Magi.
Right.
There are maybe 3 lines in Matthew's gospel. And
Right.
may I share a story about that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So the plot that comes to me is that Gaspar, the youngest king, will meet one of the gospel writers, one of the evangelists. Now, I didn't care if it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. It meant no difference to me. I just needed an evangelist to meet my king. And so
Right.
all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, for heaven's sakes, Kathy, you are going to use Matthew, because my older sister, basically she had a stillborn baby boy and she named him Matthew. And I thought, I will use Matthew to honor my nephew who I never saw in my life. Okay, so now I'm ready to do my research. I'm going
Okay.
to the Bible, and the evangelists go Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So of course I start with Matthew, and here are the lines in Matthew that we're all familiar with. The 3 kings came and they got in trouble with Herod, and they were told not to return,
Right.
and so forth. So then I think, okay, well that's good what Matthew had to say. Let's look at the next one. So Matthew, I'll go to Mark. Where's the Magi? There's no kings in here. Well, let's look at Luke. There's no kings. Wait, what? I'm going to John. Nothing about the Magi. Only in Matthew.
Wow.
And so what you have to put together here is that who told Matthew, and he did go east.
Right.
in his discipleship, after Jesus died, And so how did Matthew find out this? And he had to have met a king. He had to have met my king, Gaspar.
Right.
And so things like that would just occur astoundingly for me as I wrote. That's why I said within 6 weeks I could write the book.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Well, thank you for saying that.
It does,
I hoped
it
I was
does.
getting my point across.
No, it does make sense. So I have you given me a quote from the book that you want, or a quote that you wanted me to share with everyone. The Trilogy of the Magi about the Kings of Christmas lore is a book from all seasons and for both men and women of all ages, including teenagers, covering 50 plus years and with 3 books within the one trilogy. This novel both intrigues and inspires because wise men and women still seek him, as the church sign stated several years ago. My publisher, Westbow Press, a division of Thomas Nelson and Zandavern, would not publish my book unless I footnoted any and all biblical references. I am proud to say that the 249 total footnotes and endnotes and the 3 separate stories were all approved and accepted by their biblical scholars with no changes at all. So this quote mentions that your novel both intrigues and inspires. How so?
Well, again, no one knows anything about the 3 kings.
Mhm.
Basically, they separately, and I think there's a movie maybe that shows, maybe the TV well, I think it's the nativity story. The nativity story has them studying all together and everything.
Right.
But I think most people feel that they were in separate kingdoms and they got together. And so it's intriguing, how they got together. And again, I think the intriguing aspect is the 20 years later with Balthazar. And by the way, in Balthazar's book, I was finally able to get the women in the Bible into that story, which made me very happy. And then, as I said, Gaspar's book moves forward to be totally intriguing. What happens to him at the foot of Calvary after he himself is injured and is bleeding and is at the foot of Calvary. And again, I don't want to spoil that plot, but
No, don't.
Well, I'll just say this as an English teacher, the plot, there has to be one. So I have
Absolute-
an old good king. I'm going to need a nemesis. I'm going to need an antagonist. And if the king is old, I have to have a young guy. And if he's good, I have to have kind of a bad guy. And so the only person in the New Testament that I thought was kind of bad was Dismas. But I thought that is not going to work, because if Gaspar is at the foot of Calvary, Dismas is hanging on the cross.
Right.
And so he cannot be my young man. But when you read the story, you'll see how I worked it out.
Aha. Well, now I'm intrigued. I'm going to have to figure out how this works. So, what was your favorite part of the whole book that you wrote? What was your favorite part?
The ending of A King's Story.
Because you were finished?
No. Very good. You got me. No, because of how special it ends. And I just cannot, I can't do it. But I will just say that I'll just read the words.
Read it, please.
This is the end of the entire trilogy. At his words, and I'll leave again, it's called A King's Story, and people have to think to themselves, which king is it? Is it King Gaspar, or could there be another king involved?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, whose is the his? As I read this sentence, at his words of limitless possibilities, their eyes closed to consider his message. When they looked again, he was no longer in the camp. The end. And this is after the resurrection.
Oh.
And very much a King's Story and Gaspar's story is based on the very end of John's gospel, in which he wrote, and this is John chapter 20, verse 30, and he wrote, there were many other signs that Jesus worked, but they are not recorded in this book. And so basically that's what I did. Have we got time for a great story?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm finishing up with the King's Story. I'm typing the last chapter, lickety split, because in my mind, I've probably written it 20 times. Okay. So I'm typing it, and I am begging God. I am sending up the most heartfelt prayer saying, okay, you've been with me all through this. It's only 6 weeks, of course, but you found the Bible for me and you gave me the robe. And anytime I was stumped on where to go, you led me to where I was supposed to be. And now I just need one more sign, please, from you that I did the right thing and that this is what you wanted me to do and that it's okay, basically. And I'm typing, I'm thinking this is when my laptop explodes and this is when I get excommunicated from the church. Now, this was a Thursday. I always know it was a Thursday because that was the only day that I played bridge. I closed my laptop. I said goodbye to my kids. Within 10 minutes, I was passing Gethsemane Lutheran Church. Not my church, not my denomination. There was a sign out in front. It was meant for all the cars driving up and down the street on Hampton Avenue at Pernod. It was meant for all the people walking. But it was meant for me. And it was the answer to my prayer. And it said, through you, the gospel is spread.
Oh my goodness gracious. Wow.
Absolutely true.
So, You had something happen to you at the first signing of the King's Story at the U.S. forts, in particular Fort Leonard?
Yes, yes, Fort Leonard Wood, and I don't know why I decided that the soldiers would love my story. Maybe it was because kings and men and so forth, and there's a lot of action in it and everything. So I went down to Fort Leonard Wood. My first day, I was there for about 6 days. It was about midweek. A man passed my table, and he called back to the people, to the person who was at my table, and says, "Buy her book. It's really good." Now he turned out to be a staff sergeant who had seen action in Afghanistan and had also been stationed in Korea. Now, this is the first person outside of anybody in my family or friends who had told me that the book was good. So, of course, I said, "Oh, come on back, come on back." And so we talked during the week. And at one point I said to him, and he was not in uniform at the time, I said, "I'd like to take our picture before I leave." And he said, "You're here till Sunday, right?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I planned to see you before I left." I left meaning me. Okay, before you left. We'll get it straight, these pronouns. Okay. So he comes on Sunday. He's all formally dressed in his dress uniform.
Wow.
He has 3 medals on.
Oh
He comes
my.
around. We take our picture together. And then he walks around the front of the table and very formally takes off each of his medals and basically they were from action in Afghanistan,
Uh-huh.
and which, anyway, he was in great danger. He presented the medals to me. He said, "Your book means so much to me." He also said, "I'm not a reader, but I couldn't put it down." And I said, my statement to him was, "I can't take your medals. You've risked your life for them. You served our country."
Uh-huh.
But when someone wants to give something that precious to you, you do accept it and everything.
Yes, you do.
And
Abs-
so that was
Oh
fantastic.
my, that is, yes, that is a sweet story. That's, yeah. Yeah. We have to take a, yeah. You are listening to Gael and Bob from Author's Edge, chatting with Catherine Muehlhausler. Did I say it right that time? Okay.
You got
good.
it. You got
All
it.
right. Now, you also have had people come up to you and tell us about your reviews on your books. How's it been accepted?
Well, it's been beautiful. What's been said.
Like particular people that have touched you, or reviews that have touched you?
The words have been said that it's captivating, it's vivid, it's a clever way to present this age-old story. One reader's specific comment was that she said, "I really liked each character and easily became intrigued and enthralled with their exciting adventures." And of course, I told you already about people telling me that they're sad when it ended and so forth. And when I do book signings and somebody will come up to me and they'll say, "I've started your book," and I'm, wow. And of course, it's a wow for me.
Absolutely. What is the message of your book? What's your message to the readers?
I think that it would be that wise men and women still seek him. I had, as I possibly mentioned this earlier, that when I had decided that I would finally write about the 3 kings, and I'm passing another church. It wasn't a Lutheran church. It wasn't a Catholic church. I believe the name was Holy Redeemer. And I'm not even sure the denomination, but outside of that, in the springtime, were those words that wise men, and I believe it said wise men still seek him. But I have, as a female, have extended that
Yes,
wise men and women still seek
Let's
him.
not forget the better gender.
But I will say this, when I've been doing book signings, and I've been very successful at Barnes and Noble stores, and it's just been a total delight. May I tell you about the Persian couple who came to
Yes,
see me?
please do.
Okay, so I was at the Chesterfield Barnes and Noble. It was my second time there, and by the way, I have been invited to come back for a third time at that.
Excellent.
And that'll be sometime in the spring. We haven't set a date up yet. So I was speaking with someone. They did buy my book, and then this couple is there, and it turned out that it was a couple, and they were both from Persia. And so the man begins to talk with me, and he's bringing up to me, he said, now you know that the Magi were Zoroastrian priests. And fortunately, I had done my research.
Excellent.
And it was there. And I said, yes, I'm very much aware of that. And I said, and that's in Melchior's book a great deal. And so they did buy my book. And then Barnes and Noble did one of the most financially smart entrepreneurial moves that you could possibly imagine, that they have Starbucks in all of their stores. And the people come in and they stay and they read. So this couple goes back. The man comes back to me about 10 minutes later. He has started to read the prologue. And this is when Augustus Caesar has decided that he is going to ask the Tiburtine Sibyl if he is going to go down in history as the greatest person who ever lived, not just emperor, but the greatest person who ever lived. And she says to him, yes, until a virgin gives birth to a child and yet remains a virgin. Now, for some crazy reason, he figures that applies to him. He builds a monument about this. It's called the Auro Primogeniti Dei in Rome. Again, true stories here. And that translates to the firstborn son of God. And so this man has started to read this. And he says, I feel like I'm there. I feel the misty river. I feel the mist from the Tiber, from the river. He said, I feel like I'm there. He said, and he had not even finished the prologue. So then when he was with me, I read it with him to the end of the prologue. Of course, the prologue's not that long, maybe 3 or 4 pages. Right. So now he leaves again. Now, and then they both come back, the man and the woman, as I said, absolutely delightful couple. They decide that they're going to buy a hardback copy for their son. I believe they said he lived in New York City. I'm not absolutely certain on that. And then they presented me with a book.
And
it was lovely. And we, hugged and chatted and talked some more. And
what was the book they presented you with?
It was a religious book. It was a religious book, and I don't have it with me, and I'm sorry to my delightful couple, but I actually haven't started it yet. But it's because I'm working on the audio for Trilogy of the Magi, and it's taking up a little bit more of my time than I thought it was going to.
Okay,
so I haven't started that book.
All right. Well, what I did want to also ask you is, what other mediums are you going to put the book? Are you going to use it for TV? Have you thought about any? When I got
audiobooks, when I got locked outside of my car after we had returned from Europe and seen the baseball Cardinals play in London, and we'd managed also to get over to Rome for 3 or 4 days, and we got back, and I immediately locked myself out of the car, and to the extent that I had to have a locksmith come.
Oh my gosh!
And so I'm chatting with the locksmith, and telling about the trip and everything, and somehow or another the conversation came around to my book. I'm not quite sure how that always happens, but it does.
No, you're a good salesperson then.
But at any rate, I just decided to give him a copy of the book because he had been so great and really had not charged me an excessive amount of money to open up my car door. And anyway, he said to me, as I was telling him about it and everything, he says, I see a TV program coming on this, at least a 3-part series. I said, I do too. And I will tell you that I've actually written the script for the movie and the Broadway play for A King's Story. And I'm just waiting for a producer to say, let's roll with it.
Well, audience, if there's a producer out there, give us a call. We have an excellent book here who already has a script.
I've got Kevin Kline in mind and James Earl Jones and I can name them all.
Set it. Yeah, absolutely. Go for the stars. Absolutely. So, tell us about your writing. You're not self-published. You went to a publisher.
This is actually self-published. It's a combination.
Oh, okay.
It's a combination.
Tell us about that.
Well, And to the listeners out there, if you've had trouble getting an editor and a publisher, as I was having, then self-publishing is the route that you will have to go if you want to be published. I actually made a pro and con list. Should I spend this money or should I not?
Right.
And when I had finished, I had over 40 reasons to self-publish and to spend I'm going to say thousands of dollars that finally get involved. And the con list only had 3 things on it. And I thought, well, this makes my decision rather easy, and I've never regretted it.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things on it was, what else do you have to do with your time except to share this glorious story with people?
So how do you market your book?
You have to be very proactive. You have to get
Does
out there.
the company help you at all with marketing?
They're supposed to, but what can you say? It becomes you. It
does.
becomes the author.
Yeah.
And I've had a lovely thing that happened when I went to the Cape Girardeau Barnes and Noble. A librarian came in from the Perryville, Missouri library. Hello to everybody in Perryville, Cape Girardeau. And this librarian said to me, she seemed to know all about my book, and she said, would I be interested in coming to the library and doing a signing? And I had not done anything like this previously. And I said, sure. And so I said, we'll get together. Now, this was on a Saturday. By Wednesday, I had been Googling. The question to myself was, I wonder how many public libraries there are in the United States of America, because if I could sell my book to each of them, I might have something going.
Right.
So I, do my research, 9,057 public libraries in the United States of America.
I would have thought there'd be more than that.
Well, yeah, I let people guess, and some go high and some go low. Now, there's 400 in Missouri. 400 in Missouri alone.
Well, that's not too bad.
Yeah. And again, and then you've also got the colleges, and you've got private libraries and so forth. And at this point, I think I have 9,048 to go. So I'm set up. I'm set up at whatever that numbers are. I'm set up at them.
Okay. All right. Okay. You are listening to The Author's Edge with Gael Freer and Bob Price, coming to you weekly on Saturdays at 10 a.m. and KWHRH 92.9 and KXOK 102.9 FM, and Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. nationwide on the My Genre Radio Network. You can also view our latest videos of past shows at authorsedge.com online and download valuable information on marketing and publishing. So I've got a little bit of information for you. What are the top questions you should ask a potential publisher if you're going to go that route? First one is, what is the publishing process? And can you outline the key steps? You need to understand what the publisher process is and what this particular publisher that you're talking to, how they do the manuscript, how they do the editing, what is the cover design, distribution, and marketing. Marketing is crucial, because if your publisher is not going to help you with the marketing, maybe you need to rethink. What is the target audience and market for your particular book? That is something that they should be able to help you with, as to where your book would be best marketed and where your potential audience is. What kind of marketing promotional support are they going to provide? If you're going to go to a publisher and they're not going to support you in the marketing aspect, rethink it. What rights and royalties are you offering? That's another thing that you need to be very, very concerned with. Clarify the terms of the publishing contract, including the rights that they are acquiring, e.g., print, digital, audio, and what royalty rates that you'll receive. Ensure that you are comfortable with the terms and that they align with the industry standards. And then, can they provide references for other authors that they have worked with? Keeping in mind that if they have good recommendations, that's something that you need to take a look at as well. And contact them, talk to them. As we were talking a minute ago with Catherine, she decided to do self-publishing. Depending upon what fits best with you, that's the route you should take. So, do you have an agent?
Well, if there's one out there, I would be delighted to talk with you. We could make it a win-win for both of us, I think. So the answer is no, I do not have an agent at this time. I had one a long time ago for a previous book that I had written called Beyond Yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
She was in Florida. And I was here in St. Louis, and
It
we
just didn't work.
didn't go, didn't
didn't
go,
work.
did not work. I mean, she was lovely, and it just didn't work.
Are you writing anything now?
I absolutely am.
Well, tell us about it.
Well, I've got 3 books planned,
Ooh.
not a trilogy per se, 3 separate books this time.
Mhm.
Way back in 1976, the bicentennial of the United States. I actually worked for I was at the bicentennial office here in St. Louis, and my
Mhm.
husband and I, we went up east. It took about 6 weeks. We went to Valley Forge. We went to Philadelphia. The whole business wound up all the way up in Boston, etc. So I know, and again, my love of history. So I knew all about the United States and big celebrations going on. And so basically, it comes to me that the 250th anniversary of the United States is coming up in like 3 or 4 short years. And let me do the numbers. It'll be 2026. And so I thought to myself, when I first got this notion, I thought, you can write 3 books by that time. And then I thought, but a lot of books have been written about the revolution. How in the world are you going to make it different? How are you going to make it stand out? You need a plot. So I waited around for that to happen. And it actually happened through that older son of mine. Brett, I do love you. Nick, too, by the way. I love you, too. I'll throw in Innocent as well. Okay. So Brett says to me, have you ever heard about George Washington's spy ring? And I said, no. And he said, well, and so we are rolling with that aspect of things.
Wow, that does sound interesting.
And I will say this, when I bring this up to people, because I want to know how many people know about this.
I never heard of it.
There's like 1%.
Have you ever heard of it? No.
There's 1% of the people in the country who've ever heard of it. And yet you can go to the FBI's site and it will give you information about it. It was actually called the Culper ring, Culper, and George Washington named it after his, basically it was the area where he lived in Virginia.
Well, that's interesting.
So now that first book is set in Philadelphia. It's half written. It's rolling when I'm not doing the audio for trilogy.
Okay, so now, when I first met you at the Authors Fair at Cape Girardeau Public Library in September, I was encouraging a young woman who couldn't seem to make herself get started on her novel, and you had suggested an 88-day self-motivating process. Can you share that with us?
Well, this has been fantastic for me. So what happened? I think it was probably a January beginning of the year edition of the Parade magazine, which used to be, when I say used to be, in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, it's because I think it's only maybe about 5 or 6 months ago that it's stopped being published. But at any rate, so there was this article in the Parade magazine by this health guru who kind of worked with Oprah Winfrey and with Dr. Oz, and he was working with the guys out in Hollywood. And it was the idea of motivating them for 88 days to be healthy, to exercise, to, make their, but he was all about the health. And I thought, 88 days, I really like this. And I'd wanted to lose some weight at that time too. And I thought, it's not 100 days. It's not 3 months. It's only 88 days. I can do this. I can do this for 88 days. And then there was another article in that Parade magazine, and it was about doing things that would make your life more productive, happier, call it a self-help article. And it was the idea of maybe every single day, try to do one thing different in your life. And I thought to myself, now that's going to be pretty hard to do because I'm not exactly a spring chicken, but it's very easy to do. Just for example, you can drive a different way home, something like that. Okay. And then it was things like do a good deed for somebody. And then I've actually kind of changed that to do a good deed for somebody without any expectation of being, getting a reward back and everything. Okay, so I thought I'll put those two together. So what I was telling this young girl was that she should maybe try this for 88 days, sit down with this book that she said it was a stellar book. She said it was really good, but she could not force herself to sit down and write. I said, just try this for 88 days. I'm not a mathematician, but I did say to her, I think this will take you to just about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think that's what we said.
I said it'll be a good time to assess. was this 88 days productive for you? And not that your book's going to get written in 88 days, but that did you start it? Is
Right.
chapter 1 written? Have you done some research on it? Did you get motivated? Did you get moving?
Right.
And
I just think that's such a cool idea, 88 days, because you can do just about anything for 88 days.
yeah,
It's not a lifetime. It's not 100 days. It's an arbitrary number that you pulled out of a hat of 88 days. I really like that concept.
I absolutely did. And when I did it the first time, I actually had no intention of ever doing it again. I was going to do 88 days and forget about it. That was about 6 years ago.
You're still doing 88 days?
And see, if you start in January, you go January, February, March, and then you take 2 days off, and you can maybe eat whatever you want or do whatever the heck you want, and then you're back on your 88 days.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for chatting with us. The book is the
Trilogy of the Magi.
Yes, thank you. The Trilogy of the Magi by Catherine Muehlhausler, and you can get it on
Amazon
and Barnes and Nobles. And so thank you for tuning.
May I?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
What?
First of all, it is a book for all seasons. It is by no means just a Christmas book, because again, Gaspar's book, A King's Story, takes place at Easter, and then the 50 days after Easter.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in to Author's Edge. Tune in again next week for more tips, resources, and your favorite conversations. Our next guest will be David True, and we will be chatting about true crime novels. Till then, see you around the inkwell. Thank you all.